The waitress watched the mafia boss's daughter collapse at dinner, poison coursing through her veins. Everyone panicked, except one man who stayed too calm. So she stole $2 million from his vault, crossed state lines, and made a deal with his enemies. What she didn't know, saving that little girl would make her the most dangerous woman in his empire. The crystal chandelier above the Russo family dining table cast dancing shadows across 12 place settings of bone china that would never be used. Don Vittorio Russo didn't believe in wasted space, only wasted opportunities. Tonight, like most nights, only 3 plates held food: his own, his daughter's, and his consigliere's. Ana Morales moved silently between the kitchen and dining room, her worn shoes making no sound on the marble floor. She'd perfected the art of invisibility over 18 months of working in this mansion. In a house where men spoke in whispers and threats, being forgotten was survival. "Daddy, can I have more pasta?" 8-year-old Isabella's voice was the only pure thing in the Russo estate. Her dark curls bounced as she smiled up at her father, tomato sauce dotting her chin. Vittorio's hard expression softened, the only crack in his armor. "Anything for you, Principessa," he gestured to Anna, without looking at her. "More for Isabella." "Right away, sir." Anna reached for the serving dish, but something made her pause. A smell. Faint. Bitter almonds, mixed with something metallic. Her grandmother had been a healer in Honduras before immigrating, and she taught Anna one crucial lesson: trust your nose before your eyes. The sauce looked perfect. Rich, red, homemade by the estate's chef. But that smell. "Actually, Mr. Russo, may I bring fresh pasta from the kitchen? This batch is getting cold." Marco Bianchi, the consigliere, looked up sharply. His fork stopped midway to his mouth. For just a second, something flashed in his eyes. Fear? Anger? It vanished so quickly Anna almost thought she'd imagined it. "The girl barely touched her food, and you're worried about temperature?" Marco's laugh was smooth as silk. "You're too devoted, Anna. Sit down, Isabella. Finish what you have." But Anna had already lifted the serving dish. "It'll only take a moment." Isabella said she wants more pasta. Vittorio's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Marco, when did you start telling my daughter what to do?" The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Marco's smile tightened. "Of course, Don Russo. I apologize." Anna hurried to the kitchen, her heart hammering. She dumped the remaining pasta into a container and hid it in the back of the industrial refrigerator. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones, the same way she'd felt danger in the streets of Tegucigalpa before her family fled north. When she returned with fresh pasta, Isabella was laughing at something her father said. The child's joy was infectious, and even Marco seemed to relax. Anna served the new portion, watching carefully as Isabella took her first bite. This is better," Isabella declared. "Anna always knows what I like." "That's because Anna pays attention." Vittorio's eyes met hers for a brief moment. Unlike some people. The meal continued for another 20 minutes. Anna cleared the appetizer plates, refilled water glasses, and prepared dessert. Everything seemed normal. She was starting to think she'd overreacted about the smell. Then Isabella coughed. It started small, just a tickle in her throat. But within seconds, the cough became violent. The girl's face flushed red, then drained to a sickly white. "Bella?" Vittorio was on his feet instantly. "Bella, what's wrong?" Isabella tried to speak, but only a wheeze emerged. Her small hands clutched at her throat. Her eyes, wide with terror, found her father's face. "Call Dr. Chen. Now." Vittorio scooped his daughter into his arms as she convulsed. "Marco, get the car." But Anna saw what the others missed. While Vittorio cradled his choking daughter, while guards rushed in from their posts, while chaos erupted through the mansion, Marco Bianchi stood perfectly still. His face showed concern, yes. His mouth formed the right words of shock and worry. But his eyes were watching Vittorio, studying him, measuring his reaction like a scientist observing an experiment. And in that crystalline moment of clarity, Anna knew Marco had been expecting this. The next 3 hours blurred together in a nightmare of medical equipment, stern-faced doctors, and Vittorio's barely controlled rage. Dr. Chen arrived within 15 minutes, his emergency bag already open before he reached Isabella's bedroom. 2 more specialists appeared within the hour, summoned by a single phone call from the most powerful man in the Southern Territories. Anna stayed in the shadows, cleaning up abandoned coffee cups and dinner plates that no one remembered leaving behind. She watched. She listened. "It's definitely poisoning," Dr. Chen told Vittorio in the hallway, his voice low. "But I can't identify the toxin. It's not arsenic, not cyanide, not any of the common compounds. Her symptoms are unusual: respiratory distress, cardiac arrhythmia, but also neural involvement. Whatever this is, it's sophisticated." "How long does she have?" Vittorio's voice was dead calm. Anna had learned that was when he was most dangerous. 48 hours. Maybe less. Without identifying the poison, I can't administer the right antidote. I'm keeping her stable, but Dr. Chen trailed off, the implication clear. Vittorio said nothing. He simply turned and walked back into his daughter's room, closing the door with a gentle click that somehow sounded more terrifying than a slam. Anna found Marco in the study, pouring himself a drink. "Terrible thing," he said, not turning around. "I've sent word to our contacts. If someone did this, we'll find them." "She ate from the same pasta as you," Anna said quietly. "The original serving." Marco's hand paused, the whiskey bottle hovering over his glass. "What are you implying?" "Nothing, sir. Just an observation." Anna moved to empty his ashtray, getting closer to his desk. "We all ate from the same kitchen. Strange that only she got sick." "Children are fragile." Marco poured his drink, his back still to her. "Could be anything. Allergy, virus, bad shrimp from lunch." But Anna's eyes were already scanning his desk. Papers everywhere, shipping manifests, account ledgers, letters in Italian. Then she saw it, a corner of notebook paper sticking out from under a leather portfolio. Chemical formulas. She recognized some from her grandmother's old medical books: compounds, dosages, mixing instructions. And a name: Moranti Chemical Supply, Phoenix, Arizona. The Morantis. The rival cartel that had been trying to muscle into Russo territory for 5 years. The family that Vittorio had sworn to destroy. Anna's blood ran cold. "You should get some rest," Marco said, finally turning around. His eyes locked onto hers, and Anna saw the calculation there. He was wondering what she'd seen, how much she'd guessed. "It's going to be a long night. The Dom will want fresh coffee every hour, I imagine." "Yes, sir." Anna bowed her head and left, but her mind was racing. The poison came from inside the house. Marco had access to Isabella's food. He had connections to the Morantis, probably secret deals that would make him rich and powerful when Vittorio fell apart over his daughter's death. A grief-stricken Don was a vulnerable Don. The families would see weakness. They'd move in like sharks. And Marco would be there to pick up the pieces. But Anna had no proof. Just a smell she couldn't explain, a look she might have misread, and a piece of paper covered in chemicals. If she went to Vittorio with suspicions, he'd never believe her. She was just a maid. Marco was his oldest friend, his trusted advisor, the man who'd stood beside him for 15 years. Upstairs, she could hear Isabella crying out in her medicated sleep. The sound carved into Anna's heart. The child had been kind to her from day one, treating her like a person instead of furniture. Isabella asked about Anna's family, her hobbies, her favorite books. She drew pictures for Anna and hid them in her apron pockets, little gifts that made the long days bearable. Anna stopped outside Vittorio's private office and stared at the door. Behind it was the vault. She'd cleaned this room 100 times, had memorized every detail including the electronic keypad that Vittorio thought no one noticed him using. 0-4-1-3. April 13th, Isabella's birthday. Inside that vault was money. Lots of it. Enough to buy anything. maybe even a little girl's life. Anna pulled out her phone and Googled Moranti Chemical Supply Phoenix. The website was professional, clean, a front, obviously. But there was a contact number, an address, business hours. She looked at the time. 11:47 p.m. In Isabella's room, another cry of pain echoed through the walls. Anna made her decision. She would steal from the devil himself to save an angel. And whatever happened next, execution, torture, exile, would be worth it. If she was right about Marco, she was the only chance Isabella had. If she was wrong, she'd be dead by morning anyway. At 2:17 a.m., the Russo mansion finally fell silent. The doctors had sedated Isabella after her third seizure. Vittorio remained at her bedside, his hand wrapped around her small fingers. The guards had retreated to their posts, exhausted from hours of high alert. Anna waited in the servants' quarters until Maria, the head housekeeper, started snoring. Then she slipped out, barefoot, wearing black leggings and a dark sweater. Her maid's uniform lay folded on her bed. She might never wear it again. The office door was unlocked. Vittorio never locked internal doors. He didn't fear anyone inside his own walls. That arrogance would cost him €2 million tonight. Anna's hands trembled as she approached the vault, hidden behind a false panel in the bookshelf. She pressed the books in sequence: The Prince, Art of War, The Godfather, and the panels slid open with a whisper of machinery. The keypad glowed blue in the darkness. 0-4-1-3. She held her breath and pressed the numbers. A soft beep. The heavy door clicked open. Inside, stacks of currency-filled metal shelves. Euros, dollars, pounds, organized by denomination and bundled with paper bands. Anna grabbed a leather briefcase from the corner and began filling it with euro notes. She took only hundreds and 500s, nothing that would be immediately missed from a quick visual check. 2 million. That's what the dark web forums said a custom antidote formula cost from black market chemists. She'd spent the last hour researching on her phone, her broken screen device connecting her to an underworld she'd hoped never to enter again. The briefcase filled quickly. She was zipping it closed when footsteps echoed in the hallway. Anna froze, her heart stopping. The steps were slow, deliberate. They paused outside the office door. She couldn't close the vault. The mechanism was too loud. Couldn't hide. There was nowhere to go. She pressed herself against the wall behind the open vault door and waited. The footsteps moved on. A guard doing rounds, nothing more. Anna counted to 60, then sealed the vault and reset the bookshelf. She grabbed the briefcase and slipped out through the servants' entrance, the same door she'd used every morning for 18 months. The night air hit her face like freedom and damnation mixed together. By 4 a.m., Anna was on a Greyhound bus heading to Phoenix, Arizona. She'd paid cash for the ticket at a 24-hour station downtown, giving a fake name to the board clerk. The briefcase sat in her lap, too valuable to trust to the overhead compartment. She'd stopped at an all-night pharmacy and bought cheap makeup, reading glasses, and hair dye. In the cramped bus bathroom, she transformed herself. Brown hair became black. Contacts changed her eye color from hazel to dark brown. The glasses made her look older, professional. By dawn, Anna Morales, the maid, had disappeared. In her place sat Carmen Russo, courier for the Dawn. The name had come to her in a flash of desperate inspiration. Russo was common enough in Italian circles. Carmen was her confirmation name, one she hadn't used in years. Together, they sounded legitimate. A distant cousin, perhaps, or a trusted associate's daughter. The bus ride took 11 hours. Anna didn't sleep. She rehearsed her story, refined her accent, studied everything she could find about the Morani organization on her phone. They ran legitimate chemical supply companies as fronts, with 3 locations across Arizona. But their real business was synthesizing designer drugs and custom toxins for the highest bidder. Marco must have paid them to create something untraceable. Something that would look like natural causes after a few days, a tragic heart condition perhaps, or an undiagnosed allergy. The autopsy would show anomalies, but by then, Vittorio would be broken, his empire in chaos. Phoenix sprawled before her like a sun-bleached nightmare when the bus finally arrived. It was 3 p.m., the heat radiating off asphalt in visible waves. Anna had never felt temperatures like this. It was like stepping into an oven. She found a motel that didn't ask questions, showered, and changed into the only professional clothes she owned, a gray pantsuit she'd bought for her citizenship interview 3 years ago. With her new hair and glasses, she looked like someone who belonged in a boardroom. The Moranti Chemical Supply office was in a nondescript industrial park near the airport. The building was white concrete and tinted windows, with a parking lot full of luxury cars that no legitimate chemical supply company could afford. Anna walked in at 4:30 p.m., briefcase in hand, chin high despite her terror. The receptionist looked up, bored. "Help you." "I'm here to see Mr. Moranti." Carmen Russo, representing Don Vittorio Russo of the Southern Territories. "He's expecting me." The lies flowed smoothly, powered by desperation. The boredom vanished from the receptionist's face, replaced by nervous attention. Let me check. Please wait." Anna stood in the lobby, counting her heartbeats. This was it, the moment her bluff either worked or got her killed. The Morantis knew who Vittorio Russo was. Everyone in their world knew. The question was whether they'd believe he'd send a woman, and whether they'd risk offending him by refusing to see her. 5 minutes later, a man in an expensive suit emerged. "Ms. Russo?"
"I'm Vincent Morante."
"This is unexpected. Your cousin didn't mention sending an associate." "My cousin doesn't announce his business strategies to rivals," Anna said coolly, channeling every gangster movie she'd ever seen. "Are we doing this here? Or do you have an office?" Vincent's jaw tightened, but he gestured toward a hallway. "Follow me." The office was all leather and dark wood, designed to intimidate. Vincent sat behind his desk, another man, broader, scarred, standing behind him. Muscle. "So, what does Don Russo want?" "We have an understanding with the Southern Territories. We don't do business there. He doesn't interfere with our operations here." Anna set the briefcase on the desk and opened it, turning it to face him. 2 million euros. "I need the formula for compound TX, 47. The one you supplied 3 days ago." She was guessing at the name, but Vincent's eyes widened. "Bingo. I don't know what you're." "Stop," Anna's voice cracked like a whip. "Marco Bianchi ordered a custom toxin. You delivered. Now the Don knows about it, and he wants the antidote formula. You can cooperate, or you can explain to him personally why you helped poison his daughter." The color drained from Vincent's face. "His daughter? We were told it was for a rival boss, a preemptive strike." Marco said. "Marco lied to you," Anna leaned forward. "And now you're accessories to the attempted murder of an 8-year-old child. How do you think that plays out?" The muscle behind Vincent shifted uncomfortably. Even criminals had lines. "We didn't know," Vincent said quickly. "Marco said it was for a coup, clean and quick. A boss, not a kid." Jesus Christ, he ran his hands through his hair. "If Russo thinks we deliberately. Give me the formula, and he never has to know you were involved. You were just suppliers." Marco acted alone. "But refuse me." Anna let the threat hang in the air. "You refuse me. You refuse Don Russo. And you know what happens when he's insulted." Vincent looked at his associate, then back at Anna. The calculation was clear in his eyes. 2 million euros and their lives, or pride and certain death. "We'll need 24 hours too." "You have 2. The child is dying." After a tense silence, Vincent nodded. "Wait here." He left the office. Anna sat perfectly still, though her legs were shaking under the desk. The muscle watched her with cold eyes, his hand never far from his jacket. 30 minutes later, Vincent returned with a folder. The synthesis notes, dosage calculations, and antidote formula. Everything Marco bought from us. Anna took the folder without looking at it. "Your business with the Russo family is concluded. Forget this meeting happened." She walked out with the briefcase still full of money and the folder clutched to her chest. not daring to believe it had worked until she was 3 blocks away. But she didn't see Vincent's associate make a phone call as she left. Didn't hear him say, "Russo's maid just bought the poison formula." Yeah, the maid. Something's wrong, call the other families. This could be our opening. Anna made it back to the mansion in record time, a red-eye flight using her real passport, a decision born of desperation rather than logic. She clutched the folder inside her jacket, the formulas that could save Isabella pressed against her racing heart. The briefcase full of money sat at her feet. She hadn't spent a single euro. Dawn was breaking over the Russo estate when the taxi dropped her at the service entrance. The house looked different somehow, sharper, more alert. Every window seemed to watch her approach. She paid the driver and stepped onto the gravel driveway. Her feet had barely touched the ground when they appeared. 6 men, armed, emerging from the shadows like wolves. Tony Gallo, head of security, led them. His face was stone. "Ana Morales, you're coming with us. I need to see the Don." "You'll see him all right." Tony grabbed her arm, his grip bruising. "After you explain why his vault is 2 million euros light." Anna's stomach dropped. They'd discovered it already. Of course they had. Vittorio was meticulous about his money. He probably inventoried the vault daily. "I can explain, I have." She reached for the folder, but another guard seized her other arm. The briefcase fell, popping open. Stacks of euros spilled across the driveway. "Well, look at that," Tony said, his voice dripping with disgust. "Didn't even spend it yet. What was the plan, Anna? Wait for the kid to die and slip away in the chaos?"
No.
"I went to Phoenix, too." "Shut up." Tony dragged her toward the house. The other guards formed a tight circle around her, weapons drawn. They weren't taking chances. Inside, the mansion buzzed with barely controlled fury. Staff members pressed against walls as Anna was marched through, their faces mixing pity and judgment. Maria, the head housekeeper, crossed herself and looked away. They threw Anna into the wine cellar, a converted holding cell that had seen more than its share of traitors. The heavy door slammed shut, leaving her in darkness broken only by a single bulb swinging from the ceiling. Hours passed. Or maybe minutes. Time lost meaning in the underground silence. Anna clutched the folder, smoothing its edges, praying she'd get a chance to explain before they put a bullet in her head. Upstairs, she later learned, Marco Bianchi was delivering his performance of a lifetime. 2 million euros, Vittorio. Your own maid. Marco paced the Don's office, his face flushed with calculated outrage. While your daughter fights for her life, this woman steals from you. Probably been planning it for months. Vittorio stood at the window, his back to the room. He hadn't moved in 10 minutes. Hadn't spoken. Isabella's labored breathing echoed through the baby monitor on his desk, each wheezing gasp a countdown to the unthinkable. She flew to Phoenix, Marco continued, checking his phone with practiced casualness. My contact saw her meeting with the Morantes. The Morantes, Vittorio. Your enemies. That got a reaction. Vittorio turned, his face a mask of cold rage. She met with them? For 2 hours. Private office, closed doors. Then she flew back here with your money. Probably thought she could return it before anyone noticed. Marco shook his head. This is what happens when you get soft, when you let outsiders get close. She saw an opportunity and took it. The Morantes, Vittorio's voice was barely a whisper. While my daughter dies, my maid does business with the family trying to take my territory. It's the ultimate betrayal. Marco moved closer, lowering his voice. Let me handle this. You stay with Isabella. I'll make the maid talk, find out what she told them, what she sold. Then we end this quietly. But Vittorio raised a hand.
No.
Lock her up until morning. When my daughter is gone, his voice cracked, the only emotion he'd shown. When Isabella is gone, I'll deal with the traitor myself. Marco hid his smile. Perfect. By morning, the child would be dead, Vittorio would be destroyed, and Anna, the only person who suspected the truth, would be executed for treason. He'd orchestrated it beautifully. As you wish, Don Russo. Marco bowed his head in false reverence. I'll make sure she's secure. In the wine cellar, Anna heard footsteps approaching. The door opened, and Luca Romano stepped in, a young guard she'd known since he'd started working at the estate 6 months ago. Unlike the others, his face showed conflict rather than contempt. I'm supposed to check you for weapons, he said quietly. Luca, please, I need to see the Dawn. I have something that can save Isabella. You stole 2 million euros and met with his enemies. Luca's voice was anguished. How could you, Anna? We all trusted you. Isabella loved you. I went to Phoenix to buy this. Anna thrust the folder at him. It's the antidote formula. Isabella was poisoned, Luca. Someone in this house poisoned her, and I needed the formula to save her life. Luca stared at the folder, not taking it. That's insane. Who would?
Marco Bianchi.
The name hung in the air like a bomb. Luca stepped back, his hand moving instinctively to his weapon. You're accusing the consigliere? Anna, they're going to execute you at dawn. Don't make it worse with crazy conspiracy theories. Look at the folder. It's from Moranti Chemical Supply. They created the poison. Marco ordered it 3 days ago. I saw the paperwork in his study. He's working with the Morantis to destroy the Dawn. Then why would you steal money and go to them? If you had proof, you should have. Vittoria would never believe me. Anna's voice broke.
I'm nobody.
A maid from Honduras who cleans toilets and serves pasta. Marco is his oldest friend. I needed the antidote to prove I was right, to save Isabella before it was too late. Luca looked at the folder, then at Anna. She could see him wrestling with it, trained loyalty versus human doubt. Please, Anna whispered. If I'm lying, Isabella dies anyway, and you can execute me with a clear conscience. But if I'm right and you do nothing, an innocent child dies because we were all too afraid to question Marco Bianchi. The silence stretched between them. Upstairs, through the floorboards, they could hear raised voices. Dr. Chen shouting orders. A machine beeping frantically. Luca snatched the folder from Anna's hands. I'll give it to Dr. Chen. If you're lying, if this makes things worse. It won't. I swear on my life. Your life's already forfeit, but Luca's eyes were softer now, less certain. The Dawn ordered your execution at dawn. Said you'll answer for this when his daughter is gone. Then we have until dawn. Anna grabbed the bars of her cell. Tell Dr. Chen the poison is a custom synthetic compound, TX 47. The antidote synthesis is on page 4. The dosage calculations are based on Isabella's weight. I made sure they. How do you know her weight? I helped the nurse measure her last month for new school uniforms. Anna's voice was fierce now, urgent. I know everything about that little girl, Luca. I know she's allergic to strawberries, that she can't sleep without her rabbit nightlight, that she wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up. I didn't steal from her father to betray her. I stole to save her life. Luca looked at her for a long moment, then nodded once. If you're wrong, God help you. If I'm wrong, God help us all. He left, taking the folder with him. The door locked behind him with a final sounding click. Anna slid down the wall and sat on the cold concrete floor, her hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. She'd done everything she could. The rest was up to fate, science, and whether one conflicted guard would risk his career on the word of a desperate maid. Through the ceiling, Isabella's monitor crackled with another weak, rattling breath. Anna closed her eyes and prayed in Spanish, the words her grandmother had taught her, begging God for a miracle she wasn't sure she deserved. Outside her cell, the eastern sky began to lighten. Dawn was coming. The first rays of sunlight cut through the wine cellar's small window like divine judgment. Anna hadn't slept. Every sound from above, footsteps, voices, the mechanical hum of medical equipment, sent her heart racing with hope or dread. At 6:47 a.m., the door burst open. Tony Gallo stood there, his face unreadable. Behind him, 2 more guards. On your feet. The Dawn wants you upstairs. Anna's legs nearly gave out as she stood. This was it. Isabella must have died during the night, and now Vittoria would extract his revenge personally. She'd failed. The formula had been wrong, or too late, or... Move, Tony grabbed her arm, pulling her up the stairs. The mansion was eerily quiet. Staff members lined the hallways, their faces solemn. Some cried. Others stared at Anna with undisguised hatred. Maria spat at her feet as she passed. They led her past Isabella's room. The door was closed, but Anna could hear voices inside. Urgent, but not panicked. Not grieving. Something else. Tony pushed her into Vittorio's study and forced her into a chair. The Don sat behind his massive desk, his face haggard. He looked like he'd aged a decade overnight. Marco stood beside him, one hand on Vittorio's shoulder in a gesture of support that made Anna's skin crawl. "Do you have anything to say before sentence is carried out?" Vittorio's voice was empty, hollowed out by grief.
Ana liftet her Çin.
Did Dr. Chin receive the formula? Did he give Isabella the antidote? Marco's hand tightened on Vittorio's shoulder. Unbelievable. Even now, she maintains this fiction about. I asked the Don, not you. Anna's eyes never left Vittorio's face. Your daughter was poisoned with a synthetic compound called TX-47. I went to Phoenix to buy the antidote formula from the Moranis because someone in this house, someone you trust, paid them to create the poison. I stole your money to save your daughter's life. If that makes me a traitor, then kill me. But tell me first, did Dr. Chin use the formula? Vittorio stared at her, his expression unreadable. The silence stretched so long that Anna thought he wouldn't answer. Then, he did. Anna's heart leaped. And nothing. You brought chemical formulas from our enemies and convinced a guard to give them to my daughter's doctor. He administered some experimental compound at 3 a.m. based on the word of a thief. Vittorio stood, his movements slow and deliberate. You could have killed her faster. But I didn't. Anna's voice was steady now. Is she dead, Mr. Russo? Not yet. The words were bitter. Not yet. Then there's still hope. Hope. Marco laughed, the sound sharp. She's brain damaged from the seizures, Vittorio. Even if she survives, she'll never be the same. This woman's interference. A sound cut through the room, distant but clear. A child's cough. Not the violent, choking gasps of the night before. A normal cough, followed by a weak voice. Daddy? Vittorio's head snapped toward the door. His eyes went wide.
Daddy, I'm Festi.
The Don moved faster than Anna had ever seen him move. He sprinted from the study, Marco, and the guards close behind. Anna stayed in her chair, her hands gripping the armrests, afraid to believe what she'd just heard. Footsteps thundered overhead. Shouts, not of anguish, but of disbelief. Dr. Chen's voice, loud and professional. Her vitals are stabilizing. Heart rate normalizing. Respiratory function improving. Then, cutting through everything, Isabella's small voice. Why is everyone crying? I just want apple juice. Anna's vision blurred with tears. The little girl was alive, awake, asking for juice like it was any other morning. The antidote had worked. Minutes passed like hours. Anna sat alone in the study, listening to the chaos above transform into celebration. Nurses were crying. Staff members were hugging. Someone started praying loudly in Italian. When Vittorio finally returned, his face was transformed. The haunted look was gone, replaced by something Anna had never seen in him before. Pure, overwhelming relief. His eyes were red-rimmed, his cheeks wet with tears he hadn't bothered to hide. Behind him, Marco's face was ashen. She's awake, Vittorio's voice broke. She's asking for her rabbit. For breakfast. For he couldn't continue. He sank into his chair, covering his face with his hands. Don Russo, Anna's voice was soft. I kept my promise. Your daughter lives. Vittorio looked up at her, and for the first time, really saw her. Not a maid. Not a servant. A person who had risked everything when no one else could. Dr. Chun says the antidote was perfect. Precisely calibrated for her weight, her age, the specific toxin. He says Vittorio's voice hardened. He says whoever created this formula knew exactly what poison was used, that it would be impossible to create an antidote without detailed knowledge of the original compound.
Marcos shifted uncomfortably.
Well, obviously the Morantes knew everything. Anna stood, her fear replaced by righteous anger. They knew because they created both the poison and the antidote. They knew because someone ordered TX-47 from them 3 days before Isabella collapsed. Someone with access to her food. Someone who wanted this family destroyed. These are serious accusations, Marco said, his voice smooth but his eyes dangerous. Made by a woman who stole 2 million euros and conspired with our enemies. Vittorio, you can't possibly. Where's the money, Anna?
Vittorio interrupted.
In the briefcase on your driveway. I didn't spend any of it. I only needed the formula. The Moranis gave it to me when I told them you knew about their involvement in poisoning your daughter. They panicked, blamed Marco Bianchi for lying to them about the target. They thought it was a rival boss, not a child. The room went dead silent. What did you say? Vittorio's voice was dangerously quiet. They said Marco told them it was for a coup. A quick, clean kill of a rival. When I said it was Isabella, they gave me everything. They didn't want you coming after them for killing a little girl. Marco laughed, but it sounded hollow. This is absurd. I've been your friend for 15 years. This woman is a criminal who... Show me the briefcase, Vittorio said to Tony. The head of security left and returned minutes later with a battered case. He opened it on the desk. 2 million euros, exactly as Anna had packed it, minus a few bills that had scattered on the driveway. She brought it back, Tony said, his voice uncertain now. All of it. Because I never wanted the money. Anna's voice rang clear. I wanted Isabella to live. I needed the formula, and the only way to get it was to pretend I had your authority. The Moranis believed me because I had your vault codes, your money. They thought I was your courier. Vittorio turned to Marco slowly. You were with me when I set those codes. You're the only other person who knows Isabella's birthday is 0-4-1-3". Vittorio, you're exhausted. You're not thinking clearly. How did Anna know to go to Phoenix? Vittorio continued, his voice growing colder. How did she know which company to contact? How did she know the designation TX-47? She probably. I saw the purchase order in your study. Anna's words fell like hammer blows. 3 nights ago, when Isabella first collapsed. You were too calm, Mr. Bianchi. While everyone panicked, you just watched. So I searched your desk and found chemical formulas, supply chain documents, and shipment confirmations from Moranti Chemical Supply. All signed with your name. Marco's composure finally cracked. You broke into my study? You violated my private. Did you order TX-47 from the Morantis? Vittorio stood, his full height and presence filling the room. Of course not. This is a setup, can't you see? She's working with them, probably has been for months. They're trying to destroy us from within, and you're falling for her. Then you won't mind if I call Vincent Moranti right now and ask him. Vittorio pulled out his phone. For just a second, barely a heartbeat, Marco's mask slipped entirely. Anna saw the calculation in his eyes, the trapped animal panic, the rage of a plan unraveling. Then he lunged for the door. Tony caught him before he'd taken 3 steps, slamming him against the wall with enough force to crack the plaster. 2 other guards had their weapons drawn instantly. Close the doors, Vittorio said softly. No one leaves until I'm done cleaning house. Marco struggled against Tony's grip, his polished facade completely shattered. Vittorio, please let me explain. Explain what? How you tried to murder my daughter. How you betrayed 15 years of friendship. The Don's voice was colder than Anna had ever heard it. How you thought I'd fall apart and let you pick up the pieces. It wasn't supposed to be this way. You've gotten weak, Vittorio. The families see it. Someday, someone was going to move against you and I... So you decided to be that someone. Vittorio nodded slowly. Take him to the basement. I'll deal with him when I'm ready. As the guards dragged Marco away, his eyes found Anna's. The hatred there was pure and absolute. You stupid girl, he hissed. You have no idea what you've done. No idea what's coming. Then he was gone, his protests echoing down the hallway until a door slammed and cut them off. Anna stood alone with Vittorio in the study. The morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny stars. "You saved my daughter's life," Vittorio said finally. "You risked everything, your freedom, your life, for a child who wasn't yours. She deserves a future, Mr. Russo. Every child does." Vittorio studied her for a long moment. "My men tell me the staff is calling you. The thief who saved the Don's blood, they're split. Half want you executed for the vault, half want you honored for saving Isabella. And what do you want, sir?" The Don walked to his window, looking out over his estate. "I want to know why. Why would a maid risk everything? You could have run with the money, could have disappeared. Why come back?" Anna thought of her grandmother, of Sunday masses in Tegucigalpa, of her mother teaching her that some things mattered more than survival. "Because Isabella calls me by my name," she said simply. "In this house full of men who see me as furniture, she sees me as a person. That's worth dying for." Vittorio turned, and Anna saw tears on his face again. "Go to her," he said. "She's been asking for you." Anna found Isabella propped up against pillows, her face pale but alive with that spark of childhood resilience that could weather any storm. The girl's eyes lit up when Anna entered.
"Anna."
"They said you went away." "I had bad dreams." Isabella reached out her small hand. Anna took it gently, fighting back tears. "I'm here now, Principessa. I'm not going anywhere." "Good. Because nobody reads stories like you do," Isabella smiled, then yawned. "I'm really tired, but Daddy says I'm going to be okay." He was crying. I've never seen Daddy cry. He was very worried about you. Were you worried too? Anna squeezed the girl's hand. "More than you know." She stayed with Isabella until the child drifted back to sleep, her breathing steady and strong. Dr. Chin monitored vitals from a chair in the corner, occasionally checking his equipment with the relieved expression of a doctor who just witnessed the impossible. When Anna finally left the room, she found the mansion transformed. Staff members who'd spat at her that morning now nodded respectfully. Some even smiled. Word had spread. The maid had saved the Don's daughter. But Anna felt no triumph. Only exhaustion and the creeping certainty that Marco's words, "You have no idea what's coming," weren't an empty threat. She was right. That afternoon, Vittorio summoned her to his private dining room. She entered to find him sitting alone at the long table, a bottle of expensive wine open before him. He poured 2 glasses without asking.
"Sit."
Anna sat, uncomfortable with the intimacy of the moment. Dons didn't drink with maids. "I need to understand something," Vittorio said, pushing a glass toward her. "How did you know the formula would work? You're not a doctor. Not a chemist. You risked everything on information from my enemies." "My grandmother was a healer. She taught me about poisons, antidotes, how the body responds to toxins. When I saw Isabella's symptoms, the specific progression, the respiratory failure combined with cardiac issues, I recognized the pattern. It matched old formulas in my grandmother's journals, but more sophisticated, modern. And you remembered all that." "I remember everything about survival, Mr. Russo. When you grow up poor in Honduras, you learn which plants heal and which ones kill. You learn to read people, to spot danger, to trust your instincts." Anna met his eyes. "My instincts said Marco was wrong. And in this house, being wrong about something like that gets you killed."
Vittorio nodded slowly.
"You read him better than I did. 15 years, and I never saw it. You weren't supposed to. He's been planning this for a long time. Tell me what you know." Anna laid out everything, the chemical formulas in Marco's study, the shipping manifests from Morandi Chemical Supply, the way Marco had watched Vittorio's reaction instead of Isabella's suffering. Vittorio listened without interrupting, his face growing darker with each revelation. He mentioned details. Anna finished. "When I confronted him in the study this morning, before he ran, he knew about the seizures, the specific cardiac symptoms. No one told him those details. We were all kept out. Only Dr. Chun, and you were in that room." But Marco asked for updates. Vittorio said slowly. I told him.
Christ.
I told him everything. How she was failing, what the symptoms were. And he already knew because he designed them. Vittorio's hand tightened around his wine glass. I need to hear it from him. I need him to admit what he did. He won't. Men like Marco never confess. They justify. They'll tell you why you deserved it, why it was necessary, why they had no choice, and his voice was hard. But there's another way to get the truth.
How?
Make him think he's already won. 2 hours later, in the mansion's basement, Marco Bianchi sat chained to a chair in the soundproofed room where Vittorio conducted his darkest business. His expensive suit was torn, his face bruised from where he'd fought the guards. But his eyes still held defiance. Vittorio entered alone, pulling up a chair to sit across from his former friend. Vincent Moranti is dead, Vittorio said flatly. Shot in his office 30 minutes ago. Professional hit. The other families are already moving on Phoenix, dividing up his territory. It was a lie, but Marco didn't know that.
Good, Marco said.
He was sloppy. Should have killed the girl when he had the chance. There it was. The first crack in the facade. What do you mean? Vittorio kept his voice neutral.
Marco laughed bitterly.
Come on, Vittorio. We both know how this ends. You're going to kill me. I might as well tell you how close I came. He leaned forward as far as his chains allowed. I paid the Moranis $50,000 for TX 47. Colorless, tasteless, mimics a dozen natural conditions. Isabella was supposed to die in her sleep within 48 hours. Tragic. Unexplainable. You would have been destroyed.
Why?
The single word carried the weight of 15 years. Because you're finished and you're too blind to see it. The old ways are dying. The Morantis, the Calabrese family, the Russians, they're all closing in. You think honor and loyalty matter anymore? They don't. It's about profit, about adapting. I tried to tell you, tried to modernize our operations, but you clung to your outdated code. Marco's voice grew venomous. So I made a choice. Better to be part of the new order than die with the old 1 inch. By murdering my daughter. By removing your weakness. Marco's composure shattered completely. She made you soft. Every decision filtered through what's best for Isabella. You turned down the Calabrese partnership because it meant more time away from her. You refused the weapons deal because you didn't want that in her world. She was holding you back. She's 8 years old. She's a liability. And when she was gone, you would have been vulnerable. Broken. The families would have moved in, and I was positioned to broker the transition. A peaceful transfer of power, new alliances, real profit. Instead, you're damned Maid. Marco's face twisted with rage. Ruins everything.
How?
How did a cleaning woman outsmart my entire plan? Because she saw what I couldn't. Vittorio stood, his voice cold as winter. She saw the truth about you. Behind the two-way mirror, Anna watched with Tony and 3 other guards. Dr. Chen stood beside her, recording everything on his phone at Vittorio's request. He actually admitted it, Dr. Chen whispered, horrified. 15 years of friendship, and he poisoned a child. He never saw her as a child, Anna said quietly. Just an obstacle. On the other side of the glass, Marco was still talking, the words pouring out now in a toxic flood of justification and rage. I had it all planned. The Morantis would take Phoenix, I'd take your territories, and we'd split the profits. A new era, Vittorio. But you were so busy playing the devoted father, he spat the words like curses, that you couldn't see the empire crumbling around you. My empire is stronger than ever, Vittorio said softly. Because it's built on something you never understood.
What?
Love.
Marco laughed.
Love doesn't pay soldiers. Doesn't move product. Doesn't. Loyalty, Vittorio's voice cut through the rant. Real loyalty. The kind that makes a maid risk her life for a child who isn't hers. The kind that makes men follow you into hell because they know you'd do the same for them. You never had that, Marco. You only had fear. And that's why you lost. Marco's laughter died. For the first time, real fear flickered across his face. What are you going to do? Vittorio walked to the door, then paused.
Vincent Moranti isn't dead. Elite.
But by tomorrow morning, every family in the South will hear this recording. They'll know you plan to betray your Don, to poison a child, to broker their territories like real estate. Vittorio, wait. They'll know you're a traitor. And in our world, Marco, there's no worse death than being marked by your own kind. Vittorio, open the door. I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to let everyone else do it for me.
No.
Vittorio, please. We can work this out. I can still be useful. But the Don was already gone, leaving Marco alone with his confession and his rapidly approaching fate. In the observation room, Anna turned away from the mirror. She'd heard enough. What'll happen to him? She asked Tony. The security chief's face was grim. The Don will release him at the edge of Morani territory, with the recording on every burner phone in the criminal network. The Morantis will find him first, probably. After that, he shrugged. Nature takes its course. That's not murder. That's justice. Tony looked at her with new respect. You saved the Don's daughter and exposed a traitor. In this world, that makes you family. Anna thought about that word. Family. She'd lost hers years ago. Her mother to cancer, her father to violence, her grandmother to old age. She'd been alone for so long, surviving on the edges of other people's lives. Now a child upstairs called her by name. A Don had trusted her with the truth. And dangerous men looked at her with respect instead of dismissal. She wasn't sure if that made her lucky or damned. Probably both. Marco Bianchi disappeared on a Tuesday morning. Vittorio's men drove him to the outskirts of Phoenix and left him at a gas station with nothing but the clothes on his back and a working knowledge of what was coming. The recording of his confession had already been sent to every major player in the Southwestern Territories, time-stamped, authenticated, impossible to deny. By noon, Marco's face was on every criminal network from Los Angeles to Miami. Not as a target for execution, but as something worse, a warning. A cautionary tale about what happened to men who betrayed the old codes. Anna watched from the mansion as Vittorio orchestrated Marco's destruction with surgical precision. He made no grand speeches, issued no dramatic threats. He simply let the truth work its way through the underworld like poison through veins. Why not just kill him? Anna asked one evening as Vittorio reviewed financial documents in his study. 3 days had passed since Marco's release, and already the reports were coming in. Death is quick, Vittorio said without looking up. Marco took something precious from me, my peace of mind, my trust, nearly my daughter. He doesn't deserve quick. What's happening to him out there? Vittorio finally looked at her, his eyes cold. The Moranis put a price on his head for involving them in poisoning a child. The Calabrese family blacklisted him for plotting to sell their territories. His bank accounts are frozen. I made some calls to people who owe me favors. His safe houses have been compromised. His contacts won't answer his calls. So he's just running. He's dying slowly. Vittorio's voice carried no satisfaction, only statement of fact. Every door that once opened for him is now closed. Every friend has become an enemy. By the end of the month, he'll be nobody. Just another desperate man with nothing left to lose. And that's when someone will find him. Anna felt a chill. This was the world she'd stepped into, where justice wasn't swift or merciful, but inevitable and cruel. The authorities, she asked, already received anonymous tips about Marco's involvement in several unsolved cases. Tax evasion, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder. Vittorio smiled without humor. If the families don't get him first, the FBI will. Either way, he's finished. Within a week, the pieces fell into place exactly as Vittorio predicted. Federal agents raided Marco's home, finding documents he'd been too arrogant to destroy, evidence of deals, bribes, and murders spanning a decade. His lawyer stopped returning calls. His mistress sold her story to a tabloid. His elderly mother, living in a nursing home he'd paid for, received notice that the payments had stopped. Marco tried to run to Mexico, but the cartels there had heard the recordings. They turn him away at the border with broken ribs and a warning. There's no place for child killers here. He tried to buy protection from the Russian mob in Las Vegas. They took his offer, his remaining cash, and left him beaten in an alley. Every avenue closed. Every bridge burned. He called yesterday, Tony told Anna one morning as she helped prepare Isabella's breakfast. Used to burn her phone, begging to speak to the Don. Said he had information to trade. What did Mr. Russo say? Hung up without a word. Tony poured coffee, his face thoughtful. You know what's strange? The Don isn't celebrating. Isn't even watching the reports anymore. He's just moved on.
Anna understood.
Vittorio hadn't destroyed Marco for revenge. He'd done it to send a message. Betray the Russo family, and you don't just die, you're erased. Your name becomes a cautionary tale. Your legacy becomes a warning. It was more effective than any execution. By the third week, Marco's name stopped appearing in the network chatter. People stopped speculating about where he'd gone or who would find him first. He simply ceased to matter. Then, on a humid morning in late summer, a jogger found a body in the desert outside Tucson. Male, mid-40s, dead from dehydration and exposure. No identification, no wallet, no phone. Just a man who'd wandered into the wasteland and never came out. The local authorities ran fingerprints. Marco Bianchi, wanted for questioning in multiple federal investigations. They called it an accident, a desperate man running from the law who made poor survival choices. The criminal world knew better. When the news reached the Russo estate, Vittorio was having breakfast with Isabella. The girl was fully recovered now, back to her energetic self, chattering about her upcoming return to school. Tony approached discreetly and whispered in the Don's ear. Vittorio nodded once, then returned his attention to his daughter. And you want to join the science club?
Yes.
We get to dissect frogs and everything. Isabella bounced in her seat. Anna says science is important. Right, Anna? Anna, standing nearby with a fresh pot of coffee, smiled. Very important, Principessa. Later, after Isabella left for her tutoring session, Vittorio called Anna into his study. Marco is dead, he said simply. Exposure. The desert claimed him. Anna felt nothing.
No satisfaction, no remorse.
Just a distant sense of completion. And the other families? Satisfied. They see that justice was served without bloodshed in their territories. No wars, no retaliation, just consequences. Vittorio poured 2 drinks, whiskey this time. I've been thinking about my empire, Anna. About what Marco said. Sir? He wasn't entirely wrong. The old ways are changing. The families that survive will be the ones that adapt. Vittorio handed her a glass. But adapt doesn't mean abandon everything. It means keeping what matters and cutting away the rot. What are you going to do? Restructure. The men who stood with Marco, who shared his vision of profit over honor, they're being reassigned. Demoted. Replaced with younger lieutenants who understand that loyalty isn't just a word. He sipped his drink. I'm also legitimizing more of the business. Real estate, construction, energy. Legal fronts that actually make legal money. That's smart. It's survival. Vittorio looked at her directly. I need people I can trust in key positions. People who've proven their loyalty beyond doubt. Tony will become my new consigliere. And I want you to manage Isabella's trust fund and education accounts. Anna nearly dropped her glass. Sir, I'm not qualified. You stole 2 million euros from my vault, traveled across state lines, negotiated with my enemies, and brought back exactly what you promised. That's more qualification than most of my accountants have. Vittorio's expression softened slightly. My daughter trusts you. After everything that's happened, that means something. I'm honored, but nothing. You'll be compensated appropriately. Your immigration status will be secured, green card, citizenship, whatever you need. You'll have an office here, access to the household accounts, and a salary that reflects your new position. He raised his glass. You saved my daughter's life, Anna. Let me save yours in return.
Anna thought about it.
A real job. Legal status. Security. Everything she'd dreamed of since crossing the border with nothing but hope and determination. "What about the staff?" she asked. "Some of them still think I'm a thief." "Then prove them wrong. Not with words, with actions. Show them that loyalty and courage matter more than where you come from or what you've done." Vittorio's voice hardened slightly. "And anyone who can't accept that can find employment elsewhere." That afternoon, Vittorio called a household meeting. Every staff member, every guard, every person who worked on the estate gathered in the main hall. 3 weeks ago, someone tried to destroy this family from within, Vittorio began, his voice carrying through the room. "A man I trusted more than anyone used that trust to poison my daughter. He would have succeeded, but for the courage of one person who saw what others missed." Eyes turned to Anna, standing near the back with Maria and the other household staff. Ana Morales risked everything to save Isabella. She broke my rules, yes.
Stole my money, yes.
But she did it for the right reasons, and she came back to face the consequences. Vittorio's gaze swept the room. "From this day forward, she is not a maid. She is Isabella's caretaker and financial guardian. She is family. Anyone who has a problem with that can collect their final paycheck and leave." Silence. Then, slowly, Tony began to clap. Other guards joined in. Within moments, the entire room was applauding, some genuine, some obligatory, but all respectful. Maria approached Anna afterward, her eyes wet. "I'm sorry," the old housekeeper said. "I said terrible things. Called you a traitor. I should have known better." "You are protecting the family you serve," Anna replied gently. "I understand.
Still,
what you did. Not many would have that courage." Maria squeezed her hand. "Welcome to the real family, Mija." As the crowd dispersed, Anna stood in the grand hallway of the Russo mansion, no longer a servant in someone else's home, but something else entirely. She wasn't sure what yet, but for the first time in years, she felt like she belonged somewhere. Upstairs, Isabella's laughter echoed through the halls, bright and alive. And somewhere in the Arizona desert, the wind was already covering Marco Bianchi's grave with sand, erasing the last traces of a man who'd forgotten that some things, honor, loyalty, love, couldn't be bought or sold. Only earned. Or lost forever. The transformation of the Russo Empire began quietly, in the small hours when Vittorio couldn't sleep. He'd stand at Isabella's doorway, watching her chest rise and fall with the steady rhythm of life, and think about how close he'd come to losing it all. Not his money, not his territory, but the one thing that actually mattered. "You're doing it again," Anna said softly one night, finding him there at 2 a.m. Vittorio didn't startle. He'd grown used to her presence, the way she moved through the house like a guardian spirit. Doing what? Counting her breaths. Making sure she's real. He smiled faintly. "Is it that obvious? To someone who did the same thing for 3 weeks straight?" "Yes." Anna stood beside him, both of them watching the sleeping child. "She's okay, Mr. Russo. She's going to stay okay. Because of you. Because she's strong. Like her father." Vittorio turned to look at her, really look at her. Not the maid he'd barely noticed for 18 months, but the woman who'd risked everything, without hesitation. "I built an empire on fear," he said quietly. "I taught men to obey through threats, through violence, through the certainty that crossing me meant death. And I thought that was strength. It is one kind of strength. It's hollow." His voice carried a weight Anna had never heard before. "Marco feared me for 15 years. Obeyed me perfectly. Stood at my side through wars and negotiations. And the moment he saw an opportunity, he tried to murder my child. All that fear, all that power, it meant nothing." Anna chose her words carefully. "Fear makes people obey, but it doesn't make them loyal."
No.
"It doesn't." Vittorio's gaze returned to Isabella. "You know what you reminded me of? What I'd forgotten." "What?" "Trust." The word came out rough, like he was speaking a foreign language. "Real trust. The kind that doesn't need threats or chains. You trusted that I'd eventually see the truth about Marco. That saving Isabella mattered more than your own life. That's not fear. That's something else entirely. That's what people do for children, Mr. Russo. Any decent person would have. No, he cut her off gently. Most people would have looked the other way. Or gone to me with suspicions I would have ignored. Or taken the money and run. You did the only thing that could have worked, knowing it would probably get you killed, he paused. I spent years teaching men to fear me. You reminded me what trust can do. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Over the following weeks, the household noticed changes. Vittorio started eating breakfast with Isabella every morning instead of conducting business through dawn. He asked his guards about their families, remembered their children's names, attended their weddings. When a junior lieutenant made a costly mistake with a shipping route, instead of the expected brutal punishment, Vittorio sat him down and asked, "What did you learn?" The young man had stammered, confused, expecting violence. I learned to double-check coordinates, Don Russo. To verify routes personally rather than trusting secondary sources.
Good.
Don't make the same mistake twice, and that was it. No broken bones, no public humiliation. Just a lesson learned and a second chance given. The change rippled through the organization like a stone dropped in still water. The dawn's gone soft, some of the older guards muttered. That maid's gotten into his head. But Tony, now consigliere, shut down that talk immediately. The dawn's gone smart. There's a difference. Watch and learn. The real test came 6 weeks after Marco's death, when Vittorio's Council of Lieutenants gathered for their quarterly review. 8 men who controlled different aspects of the empire: shipping, real estate, enforcement, political connections. These were the old guard, men who'd served Vittorio for decades. Anna wasn't supposed to be there, but Vittorio had asked her to sit in, to observe, to learn how the empire actually functioned. Several lieutenants had objected. "She's not family," Roberto Messina growled. "She's got no business hearing our operations." "She is family," Vittorio replied calmly. "She saved my daughter. That makes her more family than blood relatives who've never lifted a finger for this organization." "She's a maid from Central America," another lieutenant said carefully. "With all respect, Don Russo, she doesn't understand our world. She understood it well enough to expose a traitor when none of you did." Vittorio's voice carried an edge now.
Anastais.
"Continue." The meeting proceeded with Anna sitting quietly in the corner, taking mental notes. She watched how these men interacted, the subtle power plays, the careful language, the unspoken hierarchies. Then Roberto brought up the labor situation at their construction sites. "We've got union organizers sniffing around the downtown project, making noise about safety violations, worker treatment. I say we handle it the old way. Make an example, send a message." "What does the old way mean?" Vittorio asked.
Roberto's shifted uncomfortably.
"Accidents happen on construction sites, Don Russo. A organizer takes a fall, the others get the hint." Silence fell over the room. The old Vittorio would have nodded, would have authorized the violence without a second thought. Fear kept workers in line, kept unions scared, kept profits high. But Anna saw something different in his eyes now. "No," Vittorio said simply.
Roberto blinked.
"Sir?" I said no. "We don't kill union organizers. We negotiate." Vittorio leaned back in his chair. "What are their actual demands?" "Better safety equipment, health insurance, wage increases. The usual socialist nonsense." "How much would it cost to meet their demands?"
Roberto sputtered.
"Don Russo, we can't just give in to." "How much?"
"Maybe
$500,000 annually across all sites. But it sets a precedent. Other workers will expect." "Good. Let them expect it. Budget the changes and implement them within 60 days. Vittorio's voice was steel. "I want our construction sites to become models of worker safety. Best equipment, best practices, competitive wages." "That's not how we do business." Roberto's face flushed red. "It's how we do business now." Vittorio stood, forcing everyone else to rise. "My daughter asked me yesterday what I do for work, and I realized I couldn't give her an honest answer. I couldn't tell her that Daddy hurts people for money, that daddy kills union organizers for profit. So things are changing. With respect, another lieutenant said carefully, the other families will see this as weakness. They'll think. Let them think what they want. Vittorio's gaze swept the room. Marco thought I was weak because I loved my daughter. Where is he now? Dead in the desert. Meanwhile, I'm here, stronger than ever, with loyal people around me who stay because they choose to, not because they fear a bullet. Anna watched the lieutenants' faces. Some showed understanding, even relief. Others, like Roberto, showed barely concealed contempt. She filed those reactions away for future reference. After the meeting, Roberto cornered Vittorio in the hallway.
This is a mistake.
The men respect strength, not kindness. You're letting that woman poison your judgment. Anna saved my daughter when my most trusted advisor tried to kill her, Vittorio replied coldly. So, yes, her judgment influences mine. Because hers was right, and Marco's, my friend of 15 years, was murderous treachery. The families will move against you. Let them try. Vittorio stepped closer, and suddenly the old Don was back. Dangerous, lethal, absolute. I've ruled these territories for 20 years through strength. Now I'm adding wisdom to that strength. The families that adapt will prosper. Those that don't will be replaced. Tell me, Roberto, which one will you be? Roberto paled and stepped back. I serve at your pleasure, Don Russo. Good. Then serve. Or leave. Those are your options. That night, Anna found Vittorio in his study, staring at financial reports. Some of them hate the changes, she said. I know. Roberto especially. He looked at you like he was measuring you. Vittorio glanced up, and Anna saw the calculation in his eyes. Roberto has been skimming from the construction accounts for 3 years. I've known for 2. I was waiting to see if he'd confess or if his greed would escalate. And today's outburst tells me he's escalating. He'll see my reforms as weakness and make a move, probably within the month. Maybe he'll try to rally other lieutenants. Maybe he'll reach out to the Calabrese family. Vittorio smiled without humor. Either way, he'll reveal himself completely. And then I'll remove him. Anna felt a chill. You're setting a trap. I'm letting men choose their own fates. Those who adapt, who understand that strength and honor aren't mutually exclusive, will thrive. Those who cling to the old ways, Marco's ways, will fall. He closed the financial report. My daughter is 8 years old. In 10 years, she'll be an adult. I want her to inherit an empire she can be proud of, not just afraid of. That's a good goal, Mr. Russo. Call me Vittorio. You've earned that much. He poured 2 glasses of wine. Tell me something, Anna. When you stole from my vault, what did you think would happen? Honestly, I thought you'd execute me. I made peace with that. And you did it anyway. Isabella deserved to live. That was more important than my life. Vittorio studied her for a long moment. That kind of loyalty, genuine, selfless loyalty, is rarer than diamonds. It's what I need around me now. Not fear. Not obligation. But people who choose to stay because they believe in something worth protecting. Is that what you're building? Something worth protecting? I'm trying. He raised his glass. For her. For the future. For whatever redemption a man like me can claim. They drank in comfortable silence. 2 people from completely different worlds, united by a single truth. Some things mattered more than survival.
Honor. Trust. Love.
The things Marco had forgotten. The things that would either save the Russo Empire or destroy it. Time would tell which. Roberto Messina made his move 3 weeks later, exactly as Vittorio predicted. It started with whispered conversations in parking lots, encrypted messages on burner phones, and carefully orchestrated meetings at restaurants far from Russo territory. Anna heard about it from Maria, who heard it from her nephew who worked security at one of the shipping warehouses. They're calling it the Council of Tradition, Maria told Anna over morning coffee. 6 of the old lieutenants. They say the Don has lost his edge, that he's being controlled by you. Anna set down her cup carefully. Do they plan to move against him? I don't know the details. But my nephew says shipments have been rerouted. Money's moving through channels that bypass Tony's oversight. They're building something separate from the main organization. Anna found Vittorio in his study, reviewing surveillance reports. He didn't look surprised when she shared the information. Roberto, Vincent De Luca, Paul Santoro, Marcus Chin, the Fratelli brothers, he said, ticking off names. 6 lieutenants who've been with me for over a decade. They're moving product under the Morani flag now, or what's left of it after the Calabrese family carved up most of their territory. You already knew. Since the day after the council meeting. Tony's been tracking their communications, their financial movements, their meetings. Vittorio pulled up a map on his computer showing red dots scattered across 3 states. They're trying to establish an independent operation. When it's successful enough, they'll come to me with an ultimatum. Accept their terms or face a war. What are their terms? Return to the old ways. Remove you from the household. Stop the weakness of treating workers fairly and negotiating with authorities. Vittorio's voice was calm, almost amused. Essentially, they want me to become the man I was before Isabella nearly died. The man who would have let Marco's betrayal happen because I was too blind to see it.
Anna sat down processing this.
Why haven't you stopped them? Because stopping them too early shows my hand. I need them to commit fully, to invest their resources, to reveal all their connections, to show me exactly who in my organization is loyal and who isn't. He zoomed in on the map. Roberto's been siphoning money from construction. Vincent controls 3 shipping routes. Paul has political connections. Marcus runs our overseas manufacturing. The Fratellis handle enforcement in the Eastern Territories. Together, they represent about 40% of my operation. That's a significant threat. It's a cancer that needs to be removed surgically. Vittorio's eyes met hers. I'm going to let them build their rebellion completely. Let them think they're succeeding. And then I'm going to dismantle it piece by piece without firing a single shot.
How?
He smiled. The same way I dealt with Marco. Legally, strategically, and absolutely. Over the next 2 weeks, Anna watched Vittorio's plan unfold with the precision of a master chess player. First, he promoted younger lieutenants, men in their 30s who'd grown up in a different world, who understood that the old ways of violence and intimidation were becoming obsolete. He gave them small territories, minor responsibilities, and watched how they handled them. Most exceeded expectations. Second, he began legitimizing more of the empire's operations. The construction business became fully licensed and inspected. The shipping route started carrying legal cargo with proper documentation. The real estate holdings were restructured under transparent corporate entities. To Roberto and his council, it looked like Vittorio was dismantling his own power. They grew bolder. The Don's finishing the job himself, Roberto bragged at a meeting Anna later heard on the wiretap. By the time we make our move, there won't be anything left to fight over. He's turning the family into a legitimate business. Like we're some kind of corporation instead of an organization. What Roberto didn't see was the trap closing around him. Every shipment he rerouted was tracked. Every dollar he moved was documented. Every meeting he held was recorded. Vittorio was building a case, not for execution, but for exposure. The breakthrough came when Marcus Chan made a mistake. He'd been negotiating with a Chinese manufacturing syndicate to produce synthetic opioids, planning to move them through Vincent's shipping routes and distribute them through the Fratelli's territory. It was a massive operation, worth tens of millions, and it was completely illegal. Tony's team intercepted the communications. Everything, contracts, payment schedules, distribution networks, and most importantly, the names of every corrupt official who'd been bribed to look the other way. Vittorio photocopied every document and sent them to 3 people, the FBI, the DEA, and the Calabrese family. Why the Calabrese? Anna asked when she learned about it. Because they have a strict rule against synthetic opioids, they've lost too many of their own people to addiction. They'll see this as a violation of territorial agreements and handle Marcus personally. Vittorio's voice was cold. As for the federal agencies, they've been trying to crack down on synthetic drug manufacturing for years. I'm handing them a complete case with evidence, witnesses, and documentation. They'll move fast. And Roberto? Roberto's construction accounts have been under IRS audit for a week. He doesn't know it yet. Vittorio pulled up financial records showing years of tax evasion, money laundering, and fraud. Anonymous tip from a concerned citizen. The kind of tip federal prosecutors love because it comes with bank records and paper trails. Within 72 hours, the dominoes began to fall. Marcus Chun was arrested at his home in a pre-dawn raid. Federal agents seized computers, phones, and boxes of documents. The news ran footage of him being led away in handcuffs, his face pale with shock. Vincent DeLuca's shipping containers were searched at the port. Inside, agents found not just illegal goods, but evidence of customs fraud spanning 3 years. His business licenses were revoked, his assets frozen pending investigation. Paul Santoro's political connections evaporated when leaked emails showed him bribing state senators and judges. The politicians he'd bought scrambled to distance themselves, cooperating with investigators to save their own careers. The Fratelli brothers simply disappeared. Word on the street was they'd tried to negotiate with the Calabrese family, offering territory in exchange for protection. The Calabrese sent back their ears with a message: "We don't negotiate with dealers who poison neighborhoods." And Roberto Messina received notice that the IRS was freezing all his accounts pending a full audit of 15 years of tax returns. His lawyers told him he was facing 20 to 30 years in federal prison for tax evasion, money laundering, and racketeering. Not one of them was killed. Not one drop of blood was spilled. But their lives, their empires, their futures, all destroyed with nothing more than documentation and phone calls. The remaining lieutenants got the message loud and clear. At the next council meeting, only 4 of the original 8 lieutenants remained. The others had been replaced by younger men who looked at Vittorio with something between awe and terror. The old guard made a choice, Vittorio said simply, addressing the room. They chose greed over loyalty, independence over family, the past over the future. Now they're gone. Not because I killed them, but because their own actions destroyed them. That's the new rule. I don't punish disloyalty with bullets. I punish it with consequences. He let that sink in before continuing. Some of you are wondering if you're next. If you've made mistakes that will catch up with you. Here's my answer. If you made mistakes in the old ways, under the old system, you have 30 days to confess and make restitution. Come clean, fix what you broke, and you'll continue in your position. But if you hide it, if you wait for me to find it, you'll end up like Roberto, bankrupt, imprisoned, and forgotten. The room was silent. This organization is changing, Vittorio said. We're becoming something stronger, something sustainable, something that won't crumble the moment a traitor sees an opportunity. Those who can adapt will thrive. Those who can't will be replaced. It's that simple. After the meeting, one of the young lieutenants, a man named David Torres who ran the southern shipping routes, approached Vittorio privately. Don Russo, I need to confess something. Vittorio gestured for him to continue. I've been taking a percentage off the top of fuel costs. Only 2%, but over 3 years, it's about $40,000. I justified it as compensation for the risk I take running those routes. But after seeing what happened to the others, David's voice shook. I don't want to end up like them. I'll pay it back, every cent, whatever you want me to do. Vittorio studied him for a long moment. You ran those routes safely, for 3 years. Never lost a shipment, never had a customs problem, built good relationships with the dock workers. Yes. Yes, sir. And you're confessing without being caught, without being investigated, because you want to do right by the organization. Yes, sir. Pay back the $40,000 over the next year. Consider it a loan you're repaying. And David? Vittorio's voice softened slightly. Thank you for your honesty. That's what I need now. Not perfection, but integrity. David left looking relieved, and Anna understood what Vittorio was doing. He wasn't just removing traitors. He was rebuilding the organization's culture from the ground up. Fear was being replaced by accountability. Violence was being replaced by consequence. The old way was dying, and something new, something potentially more powerful, was being born. Will it work? Anna asked later that evening. Vittorio looked out over his estate, where lights twinkled in the twilight. I don't know, but it's what Isabella needs to inherit. Not a criminal empire built on terror, but a legitimate organization built on respect. If it works, she'll have choices I never did. And if it doesn't, he shrugged. At least I tried to give her something better. In the distance, they could hear Isabella laughing as she played in the courtyard. The sound of innocence, protected by a father trying to redeem his past one decision at a time. The Morani Empire had been fracturing since Marco's death, but it still held significant power across Arizona and Nevada. Vincent Moranti's younger brother, Dario, had taken control after the initial chaos, and he was smarter than his predecessor, cautious, calculating, and determined to rebuild what his family had lost. But Dario didn't know about the folder. The folder Anna had carried back from Phoenix contained more than just the antidote formula. It held synthesis notes, supplier lists, distribution channels, and most crucially, the names of every corrupt official, law enforcement officer, and politician the Morantis had on their payroll. Marco had bought comprehensive documentation, planning to use it as leverage. Instead, it became the blueprint for the Morantis' destruction. They think they're recovering, Tony said, spreading surveillance photos across Vittorio's desk. Dario's been aggressive, absorbing smaller operations, renegotiating old deals, even trying to push into our southern territories again. Let him think he's succeeding, Vittorio replied, studying the photos. How long until the federal task force is ready? 2 weeks. They're building cases against 15 Morani associates based on the information you provided. But they want more. They want the entire organization, not just street-level dealers.
Vittorio smiled.
Then let's give them everything. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Rather than wage a violent war that would draw attention and casualties, Vittorio would use the Morantis' own corruption against them, while simultaneously positioning himself to absorb their legitimate business interests. Phase 1 began with the suppliers. Anna had documented every chemical company, shipping contractor, and manufacturing facility the Morantis used. Vittorio's team approached each one quietly, offering better terms, cleaner documentation, and the promise of protection from federal scrutiny. Most switched allegiances within days. Those who didn't receive anonymous tips that the DEA was investigating their clients. They switched after that. Suddenly, the Moranis couldn't get the supplies they needed. Shipments were delayed, prices doubled, and quality became inconsistent. Their product suffered, their reputation declined, and their customers started looking elsewhere. Dario's scrambling, Tony reported after 2 weeks. He's trying to find new suppliers, but everyone's either working with us or too scared to touch Moranti business. His distribution network is falling apart.
Good.
Move to Phase 2. Phase 2 targeted their money. The Morantis laundered profits through dozens of businesses, restaurants, car washes, laundromats, legitimate chemical companies. Anna's folder had identified them all. Vittorio didn't attack these businesses directly. Instead, he fed information to the IRS, the State Tax Board, and financial crimes investigators. Audits began simultaneously across 3 states. Bank accounts were frozen pending investigation. Business licenses were suspended. The Moranis found themselves drowning in legal paperwork, unable to access their own money while lawyers billed them thousands per hour. They're liquidating assets, Tony said, showing financial reports. Selling properties at a loss, borrowing from loan sharks, even pawning personal items. Dario's bleeding money trying to keep the organization afloat. How long before he breaks? Another month, maybe less. But there's a complication. Tony pulled up a new photo. Dario Moranti meeting with 2 men in expensive suits. He's reaching out to the Sinaloa cartel, trying to negotiate a partnership, offering them access to his distribution routes in exchange for product and protection. Vittorio's expression darkened. That would give Sinaloa a foothold in our territory.
Exactly.
If they accept, we're looking at a real war. The kind with bodies and headlines. Anna, who'd been listening from her usual corner, spoke up. What if they don't accept? Both men turned to look at her. What if Sinaloa thinks Dario is more trouble than he's worth? She continued. What if they see the Morani organization as weak, compromised, and under federal investigation? Vittorio's eyes lit up. They'd refuse the partnership and possibly eliminate Dario as a liability. Go on. The folder has documentation of every deal the Morantes made, including 3 transactions with a Sinaloa lieutenant that violated cartel policy. They sold synthetic compounds to rival organizations in Sinaloa territory. Anna pulled out her phone, showing notes she'd kept. If Sinaloa leadership found out their own lieutenant was dealing with the Moranis behind their backs, dealing in products they specifically forbid, they'd handle it internally, Tony finished, understanding dawning. And they'd see Dario as the source of the problem.
Exactly.
We don't tell Sinaloa about Dario's proposal. We tell them about the violations their lieutenant committed with Moranti cooperation. We let them connect the dots themselves.
Vittorio laughed, genuine, appreciative lauter.
You're learning. Tony, make it happen. Anonymous package to Sinaloa leadership. Documentation, evidence, dates, everything. Let them clean their own house. Phase 3 was the most delicate, law enforcement. The federal task force had been building cases against the Moranis for months, but they lacked the final pieces, the connections between street-level dealers and family leadership, the proof that Dario personally ordered illegal activities. Vittorio provided those pieces through a cutout, a lawyer with connections to the U.S. Attorney's Office who discovered evidence during an estate settlement. Phone records, financial transfers, shipping manifests, all pointing directly to Dario Morani. The indictments will be ready in 3 weeks, Tony reported. Racketeering, drug trafficking, money laundering, murder conspiracy. They're charging 43 people, including Dario and most of his inner circle. 3 weeks is too long. Dario might run. They're watching him. The moment he tries to leave the country, they'll move early. But Dario never got the chance. 2 days later, the Sinaloa cartel's response arrived in the form of a news report. 3 bodies found in burned-out warehouse in Phoenix. Sources identify victims as known associates of the Moranti criminal organization. Investigation ongoing. One of the bodies was the Sinaloa lieutenant who'd made unauthorized deals. Another was Dario Moranti's cousin and chief enforcer. The third was a message. A low-level Morani dealer left alive long enough to spread word that Sinaloa was done with the Morani family. Dario went into hiding immediately, but it didn't matter. The infrastructure was already gone. When federal agents finally raided Morani properties 3 weeks later, they found abandoned offices, empty warehouses, and burned documents. The few associates they arrested flipped immediately, offering testimony in exchange for reduced sentences. The Moranti Empire, which had controlled criminal operations across 2 states for 15 years, collapsed in less than 2 months. It's over, Tony said, watching news coverage of the raids. The Morantis are finished. Dario's probably in Mexico or dead in a ditch somewhere. Either way, their territory is open. Not open, Vittorio corrected. Administered. We're not absorbing their criminal operations. We're legitimizing their business interests. The chemical supply companies, the shipping routes, the real estate holdings. All purchased through proper legal channels at bankruptcy auction prices. Anna reviewed the acquisition documents, impressed despite herself. Vittorio was buying legitimate businesses that the Moranis had used as fronts, stripping away the criminal elements and integrating them into his increasingly legal empire. The other families will notice, Tony warned. They'll see that you destroyed a rival without firing a shot and absorbed their assets legally. Some will admire it. Others will fear it. Good. Fear and admiration are useful tools when applied correctly. Vittorio signed the final purchase agreement. The Moranis fell because they refused to evolve. They clung to violence and intimidation while the world changed around them. We're not making that mistake. Over the following weeks, news of the Moranti collapse spread through the criminal underworld like wildfire. The story took on mythical proportions. How Don Vittorio Russo had destroyed a rival empire without violence, using only information, strategy, and patience. Some families sent congratulations. Others sent subtle threats. A few reached out to negotiate new territorial agreements, recognizing that the balance of power had shifted dramatically. But the most significant response came from Chicago, from the Commission, the loose confederation of family bosses who maintained order among the major criminal organizations. They invited Vittorio to a summit. "They want to understand what happened," Tony said, reading the formal invitation. "And probably warn you not to do it again. The other bosses are nervous. You've shown them that their organizations are vulnerable in ways they never considered." Vittorio studied the invitation. "When?" "2 weeks. Chicago. All the major families will be there." "I'll go." "But not alone," Vittorio looked at Anna. "You're coming with me." Anna's eyes widened. "Sir, I'm not. You're the architect of this strategy. You identified the Morani weakness, suggested the Sinaloa approach, and helped document everything. The Commission should hear from you directly." He smiled slightly. "Besides, it's time the old bosses met the woman who outsmarted Marco Bianchi and dismantled the Morantes. Let them see what the new world looks like." Tony grinned. "They're going to lose their minds when you walk in with her." "Good," Vittorio said. "Fear and admiration, Tony. Fear and admiration." In the courtyard, Isabella was practicing piano, the notes drifting through the open windows. Somewhere in the desert, the Morani Empire was being bulldozed and paved over. And in Chicago, old men in dark rooms were beginning to realize that the rules had changed. The question was whether they'd adapt or follow the Morantes into oblivion. Vittorio Russo was betting on the latter. And so far, he hadn't lost a bet. The Commission meeting took place in a private room at a historic Chicago steakhouse, the kind of establishment where deals had been made and fates decided for generations. 8 family bosses sat around a circular table, their faces ranging from curious to openly hostile. Vittorio entered with Anna at his side, and Tony one step behind. The effect was immediate. Conversations stopped mid-sentence, eyes widened, and the oldest boss, Giovanni Calabrese, actually laughed. "Vittorio, you bring a woman to commission business? Have you lost your mind along with your consigliera?" "This woman saved my daughter's life and helped dismantle the Morani organization," Vittorio replied calmly, pulling out a chair for Anna. "She has more strategic insight than most men in this room. She stays." The bosses exchanged glances. Some looked offended. Others looked intrigued. "Let's get to business," said Richard Chen, who ran operations in San Francisco. "You destroyed the Morantes without our approval, without territorial consultation, and without traditional methods. You've upset the balance." "The Moranis tried to kill my daughter," Vittorio said flatly. "They supplied the poison through Marco Bianchi. I responded appropriately. By sicking the feds on them? By turning their own suppliers against them?" Vincent Calabrese, Giovanni's son, leaned forward. "You weaponized law enforcement, Vittorio. That's not how we operate. That's a line we don't cross." "I crossed no line. I simply provided information about criminal activity to the appropriate authorities. What they chose to do with that information was their business." Vittorio's voice remained calm. "Or would you prefer I started a war? Bodies in the streets? Federal attention on all of us." "We prefer you follow protocol," said James Sullivan, the Boston boss. "You consult the Commission before major moves. You don't unilaterally destroy organizations that have stood for decades." Anna spoke up, her voice clear and steady. "The Morantes poisoned an 8-year-old child. What protocol covers that?" The room went silent. Several bosses shifted uncomfortably. "The Moranis didn't know she was a child," Richard Chen said carefully. "Marco Bianchi lied to them. Said it was a rival boss. When they found out the truth, they still supplied the poison," Anna interrupted. "They still created a compound designed to kill slowly and painfully. They still profited from attempted murder. Mr. Russo gave them every opportunity to cooperate, to make amends. They chose to rebuild their operation and push into his territory instead. So he removed them. Completely. Efficiently. Without starting a war that would have drawn attention to all of you." Giovanni Calabrese studied Anna with sharp eyes. You speak boldly for someone who was a maid 6 months ago. I speak truthfully, Mr. Calabrese. Something Marco Bianchi stopped doing years ago, and look where it got him. Dead in a desert because he betrayed the man he swore to serve. Anna met his gaze without flinching. The old ways are dying. You can either adapt or wait for someone to dismantle you the same way Mr. Russo dismantled the Morantes. Is that a threat? Vincent Calabrese's hand moved toward his jacket. It's an observation, Vittorio said coldly. Put your hand on the table, Vincent. We're here to talk, not to threaten. Vincent slowly complied, but his eyes burned with anger. The woman has a point, said Thomas Giordano, the quiet boss from Detroit. The Morantes operated for 15 years using violence and intimidation. Vittorio destroyed them in 2 months using information and strategy. Which approach is more dangerous to law enforcement? Which one draws less attention to our operations? It sets a precedent, James Sullivan argued. If we start using federal agencies as weapons against each other, it's only a matter of time before those agencies turn on all of us. They're already turning on us, Vittorio said. RICO statutes, financial surveillance, coordinated task forces. The government has been weaponizing law enforcement against organized crime for decades. I simply used the same tools they've been using against us. The difference is I controlled when and where they struck. I gave them the Morantes, and in doing so, took pressure off everyone else at this table. Richard Chin frowned. What do you mean? The federal task force was building cases against multiple organizations. The Morantes were their primary target, but they had preliminary investigations into operations in San Francisco, Boston, and New York. Vittorio pulled out a folder, not Anna's original, but a summary document. I accelerated their Moranti timeline and gave them such a complete case that they closed the other investigations. You're welcome. The bosses passed the folder around, reading with growing astonishment. How did you get this? Giovanni demanded. I have a lawyer with connections. He receives information and shares it appropriately. The point is, by giving the feds the Morantes, I protected the rest of us. They got their headlines, their arrests, their convictions. And we got breathing room. Thomas Giordano nodded slowly. So, this wasn't just about revenge for your daughter. It was strategic positioning. Everything is strategic, Vittorio replied. My daughter's safety is paramount, yes. But protecting this organization, these territories, and by extension the stability of our entire network? That's equally important. The Morantes were a threat to all of that. They had to go. The room fell into contemplative silence. Finally, Giovanni Calabrese spoke. You've made your point, Vittorio. The Moranti situation is acceptable. But understand this. You don't make unilateral decisions of this magnitude again without consulting the Commission. And you certainly don't weaponize federal agencies without our knowledge. Are we clear? Crystal clear, Vittorio said. As long as you understand that if someone tries to harm my family again, I will respond with whatever tools are necessary. With or without permission. The threat hung in the air, unmistakable and absolute. Your daughter, Giovanni said after a moment. How is she? Fully recovered. Back in school, happy, healthy. Thanks to Anna. Giovanni's eyes shifted to Anna, reassessing. You're Honduran? Yes, sir. And you stole 2 million euros from the Don's vault, negotiated with the Morantes, and brought back an antidote that saved his daughter's life. Yes, sir. Then you went on to help dismantle an entire criminal organization using strategy and information rather than violence. I provided suggestions. Mr. Russo executed the plan. Giovanni laughed, a real, genuine laugh that transformed his lined face. Vittorio, you magnificent bastard. You found someone who thinks like you, but isn't afraid to tell you the truth. That's rarer than gold. I know, Vittorio said simply. The families will talk, Vincent warned. They'll say you're soft, controlled by a woman, that you've lost your edge. Let them talk, Vittorio replied. While they talk, I'll keep building an empire that can withstand federal scrutiny, that generates legitimate wealth, that protects its people without unnecessary violence. And when they're ready to evolve, I'll be here to show them how. The commission meeting ended with grudging acceptance. No votes were taken. That wasn't how it worked, but the message was clear. Vittorio Russo had crossed lines, but he'd done so effectively enough that the other families would tolerate it.
For now.
As they left the restaurant, Anna felt the weight of what had just happened. She'd spoken directly to the most powerful criminals in America. She'd challenged them, corrected them, and somehow walked out alive. "You did well," Vittorio said as their car pulled away. "Better than most men I've brought to commission meetings. They were testing me, testing us. And we passed." He looked out at the Chicago skyline. "Word will spread." Don Russo defeated his rivals without firing a shot. Don Russo destroyed the Morantes with nothing but information and strategy. Don Russo brought a woman to the commission, and she faced down bosses twice her age. Is that good or bad? It's power, Tony said from the front seat. The right kind. The kind based on respect and fear, not just fear alone. Anna thought about that. 6 months ago, she'd been invisible, a maid cleaning floors and serving pasta. Now she sat in cars with mafia bosses, strategized the downfall of criminal empires, and spoke at meetings that decided the fate of territories and lives. She still wasn't sure if that made her lucky or damned. But as they drove through Chicago's streets, heading back to the airport where Isabella waited on a video call asking when they'd be home, Anna realized something important. She'd found a purpose. Not just survival, but something worth fighting for. A little girl who deserved better than the world she'd been born into. A man trying to redeem a lifetime of violence by building something more sustainable. A future where strength came from wisdom rather than just brutality. It wasn't the life she'd imagined when she crossed the border with nothing but hope. It was better. And infinitely more dangerous. 6 months after the commission meeting, the Russo estate had transformed in ways both visible and invisible. The visible changes were subtle, but significant. The security team now wore suits instead of tactical gear. The guards smiled at visitors instead of glaring. The mansion hosted charity fundraisers for children's hospitals and education initiatives. To outsiders, the Russo family looked like wealthy philanthropists, not a criminal empire in transition. The invisible changes ran deeper. In the former wine cellar where Anna had once awaited execution, Vittorio had built a legitimate business operations center. Young professionals, accountants, lawyers, compliance officers, worked at clean desks with proper computers, managing the increasingly legal side of Russo enterprises. Construction, real estate, energy, shipping. All legitimate now, or becoming so. Anna walked through the operations center one morning, reviewing quarterly reports. Her title was officially Chief Financial Officer of Russo Holdings LLC, though some of the old guard still called her that maid who saved the little girl. She didn't mind. It kept her humble. The downtown project is 3 weeks ahead of schedule, reported David Torres, who'd confessed his theft months ago and proven himself invaluable since. Union relations are excellent. We're actually getting positive press for our safety record and worker treatment. That's because we're actually treating them well, Anna said, signing off on bonus payments for the construction crews. Novel concept. David grinned. The other developers hate us. We're making them look bad. Good. Competition drives improvement. Anna moved to the next report. What about the energy contracts?
Signed.
We're now the primary supplier for 3 school districts and 2 hospitals. All above board, all properly bid, all profitable, David hesitated. Some of the old lieutenants are grumbling. They say we're making less money than we used to. We're making cleaner money. That's worth more in the long run. Anna looked up. Any specific complaints I should know about? Just the usual. Things were better in the old days, the dawn's gone soft, that kind of talk. Let me know if it escalates beyond talk. Upstairs, Vittorio was having breakfast with Isabella, now 9 years old and thriving. The girl had grown 3 inches, lost 2 teeth, and developed an obsession with marine biology. Daddy, did you know octopuses have 3 hearts? 3. And they can change color in milliseconds. Isabella gestured enthusiastically with her fork, nearly flinging eggs across the table. I did not know that, Vittorio said, catching her hand gently. But I do know that food stays on the plate, not on the floor. Sorry, Isabella grinned, utterly unrepentant. Can we go to the aquarium this weekend? Please? Anna said she'd come if you said yes. Did Anna now? Vittorio looked at Anna, who'd just entered with morning reports. Conspiring with my daughter against me? Always, Anna replied with a slight smile. The aquarium has a new jellyfish exhibit. Very educational.
Educational, Vittorio repeated.
That's your angle? Isabella's grades in science have improved significantly since she started studying marine life. Encouraging that interest seems prudent. Isabella bounced in her seat.
See?
Anna gets it. Education is important. You're always saying that. Vittorio looked between them, his daughter's hopeful face and Anna's carefully neutral expression, and surrendered.
Fine.
Saturday afternoon. But we bring security. Not the scary guards, Isabella bargained. The nice ones who don't stare at everyone like they're enemies. Deal. After Isabella left for her tutoring session, Vittorio reviewed the reports Anna had brought. His expression grew progressively more satisfied. Legitimate revenue is up 40% from last year, he noted. Our construction division won 3 government contracts. The shipping operations are profitable and fully audited. Even accounting for the operations we've shut down, we're making more money legally than we ever did through crime. Crime has high overhead, Anna observed. Bribes, lawyers, bail, medical expenses for injured associates, payments to families of men who get arrested or killed. When you factor all that in, legitimate business is often more profitable. Just less dramatic.
Vittorio laughed.
You sound like a business school textbook. I've been reading business school textbooks. Someone has to understand modern corporate finance if we're going to keep this transition working. She pulled out another document. Speaking of which, 3 younger lieutenants have asked about profit-sharing programs and retirement plans. Retirement plans? For our people? Why not? Legitimate businesses offer them. If we're transitioning to legitimate operations, our people should have legitimate benefits. It builds loyalty. People who know they have a secure future are less likely to steal or betray. Vittorio considered this. Marco never asked about retirement. He only cared about immediate power. Marco thought short-term. We're building long-term. Anna sat down across from him. Your daughter will be an adult in 9 years. What do you want her to inherit? A criminal empire constantly under threat, or a legitimate business empire that can last generations? You know the answer to that. Then we keep moving forward. Yes, some of the old guard complains. Yes, we're making enemies among families that refuse to evolve. But we're also building something sustainable. Something Isabella can be proud of.
Vittorio nodded slowly.
What about you, Anna? What do you want from all this? The question caught her off guard. Sir, you've gone from maid to CFO in 6 months. You've helped restructure an empire, face down the commission, and become essential to this family's future. What's your endgame? What do you want? Anna thought carefully before answering. I want Isabella to go to college without fear. I want her to choose any career she wants without being haunted by her father's past. I want her to introduce herself as Isabella Russo without people immediately thinking, Mafia princess, that's what I want. And for yourself. To know I helped make that possible, Anna's voice was quiet but firm. I didn't have choices growing up. My family fled violence. My mother died because we couldn't afford healthcare. My father was killed for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. I survived by being invisible, by accepting whatever scraps life offered. But Isabella? She deserves every choice in the world. If I can help give her that, then my life means something. Vittorio studied her for a long moment. You're a remarkable woman, Anna Morales. I'm a practical woman who got lucky.
No.
Luck is winning a lottery. What you did, Seeing through Marco, saving Isabella, helping rebuild this organization. That's not luck. That's character. He stood, walking to the window that overlooked the estate. I've been thinking about succession planning. Anna's heart skipped. Sir? Not immediately. I'm not dying, not retiring yet. But eventually, this empire will need new leadership. Tony's excellent as consigliere, but he's not built to be the Don. He knows it, I know it. The younger lieutenants are capable but inexperienced. And Isabella, he trailed off. Isabella should have choices, Anna said firmly. Not obligations.
Exactly.
Which is why I'm establishing a trust structure. Professional managers will run the legitimate businesses. A board of directors will make major decisions. Isabella will have ownership but not operational responsibility unless she chooses it. And that board, he turned to face her. I want you to chair it. Anna's mouth went dry. You want me to run your empire? I want you to steward it, to guide it, to ensure that when I'm gone, everything we've built continues. Vittorio's voice was serious. You're not Italian. You're not from this world. You have no family connections or traditional power base. But you have something more valuable. You see clearly. You make decisions based on what's right, not what's traditional. And most importantly, you care about Isabella's future as much as I do. The families would never accept. The families are already accepting it. You sit in meetings. You make recommendations. You've proven yourself more capable than most men who've been in this life for decades. He moved closer. I'm not asking you to become a mob boss, Anna. I'm asking you to be what you already are, a guardian. Someone who protects what matters. Anna felt the weight of what he was offering. Not just power, but responsibility. Not just position, but purpose. I need time to think about this, she said finally. Take all the time you need. But know this. Whether you accept or not, you're already family. That doesn't change. That evening, Anna found herself in the courtyard where Isabella often played. The girl was there now, reading a book about dolphins, her face peaceful in the fading sunlight. Maria joined her, carrying 2 cups of tea. She looks happy. She's happy, Anna agreed. That's all that matters. The Don told me about his succession plans. About the board he's creating. Maria sipped her tea. About your role in it. Word travels fast. Always does in this house, Maria smiled. You know, when you first arrived, I thought you were just another girl running from something. We get a lot of those desperate women looking for any job, any stability. Most don't last 6 months. I almost didn't last 6 days. But you did. And you became something none of us expected. Maria's voice grew warm. You became the heart this family needed. Not just saving Isabella's life, though that would be enough, but reminding all of us, the Don included, that there's more to life than power and fear. There's loyalty,
Love.
purpose. Anna felt tears threatening. I just did what anyone would do.
No, mija.
You did what almost no one would do. You risked everything for a child who wasn't yours. And in doing so, you saved more than just her life. You saved this whole family from destroying itself. Maria squeezed her hand. Whatever you decide about the Don's offer, know that you've already changed everything. This place, these people. We're better because you're here. In the courtyard, Isabella looked up and waved.
Anna.
Come read with me. This book says dolphins have their own language. Maybe we could learn it. Anna waved back, smiling despite the tears in her eyes. She'd crossed a border with nothing but hope, survived by being invisible, and somehow ended up here. Valued, trusted, essential. Not bad for a maid from Honduras. Not bad at all. The annual gathering of the 5 families took place in a neutral location, a renovated warehouse in Philadelphia that had been swept for surveillance devices 3 times. The commission had evolved into something more formal now, with quarterly meetings and actual agendas. Vittorio arrived with his usual entourage, Tony for security personnel, and Anna. The other bosses noticed her immediately. Some nodded in acknowledgement. Others exchanged knowing glances. Giovanni Calabrese actually stood to greet her. Ms. Morales. Good to see you again. Mr. Calabrese. Thank you. I heard about the downtown construction project. Record safety, ahead of schedule, under budget. Impressive, Giovanni's eyes twinkled. You're making the rest of us look bad. Just doing good business, sir. That's precisely the point, he gestured to a seat. Shall we begin? The meeting covered standard territory, disputes, opportunities, federal pressure, changing markets. But toward the end, Richard Chin raised an unexpected topic. Vittorio, there's been talk about succession, about your unconventional approach to leadership transition. Every eye in the room turned to the Russo delegation. Vittorio leaned back calmly. My daughter is 9 years old. Succession planning seems prudent. Indeed. But the structure you're proposing, a trust, a board of directors, professional management, it's not traditional. Vincent Calabrese's voice carried skepticism. And your choice for board chair raises questions. Ask them, Vittorio said flatly. Vincent's jaw tightened. She's not Italian. Not from a family. Not even American by birth. You're proposing to put a Honduran former Maid in charge of one of the most powerful territories in the country. How is that acceptable? The room went silent, waiting for Vittorio's response. But it was Giovanni who spoke first. Vincent, shut up, the old boss's voice carried absolute authority. You're embarrassing yourself. Father, I'm just saying. You're saying outdated nonsense that got the Moranis destroyed. Giovanni turned to address the room. Ana Morales saved Vittorio's daughter when his own consigliera tried to murder her. She exposed a traitor none of us saw. She helped dismantle the Morani Empire without starting a war. She's restructured Russo operations to be more profitable and less vulnerable to federal prosecution. By any measure, loyalty, intelligence, results, she's earned her position. Thomas Giordano nodded. Giovanni's right. The old ways are dying. My own grandson is getting an MBA, for God's sake. He wants to run the family businesses using spreadsheets and market analysis. At first, I thought he was soft. Now I realize he's smart. The world has changed, Vittorio added. Law enforcement has sophisticated financial tracking, RICO statutes, interagency cooperation. The families that survive will be the ones that adapt. Ana represents that adaptation. She understands both worlds, the old codes of loyalty and honor, and the new realities of legitimate business. So, you're proposing what exactly? Richard Chin asked. That we all hire women from Central America to run our organizations. I'm proposing you promote based on merit, not tradition, Vittorio replied. That you find people you can trust, people who've proven their loyalty, people who think strategically rather than just following old patterns. Whether those people are men, women, Italian, Chinese, whatever, competence matters more than pedigree. Ana spoke up, her voice clear. Gentlemen, I'm not here to threaten your traditions or change your families. I'm here because Isabella Russo deserves a future where her father's past doesn't define her present. Mr. Russo is building something sustainable, something his daughter can inherit with pride rather than fear. If that approach works, others may follow. If it doesn't, that's our problem, not yours. James Sullivan, who'd been quiet throughout, finally spoke. You really think you can transition completely? Leave the old business behind. We already are, Vittorio said. Legitimate revenue exceeds criminal revenue by 3-1. Within 5 years, we'll be completely clean. Our territories will remain ours through economic influence rather than violence. Our people will have benefits, retirement plans, legal protections. And Isabella will inherit a business empire, not a criminal 1-inch. And if the other families don't adapt, Vincent challenged. If we stay traditional while you go legitimate, then we coexist peacefully, Vittorio said. I'm not trying to change your operations. I'm changing mine. But understand this, my family tried to poison Isabella once. If anyone threatens her again from any family, for any reason, I will respond with every resource at my disposal, legal or otherwise. That's not negotiable. The threat was clear, unmistakable, and backed by the proof of what he'd done to the Morantes. Giovanni broke the tense silence. I propose we accept Vittorio's succession structure and recognize Ana Morales as legitimate leadership within the Russo organization. All in favor? For hands rose. Vincent abstained, but didn't oppose. Motion passes. Vittorio, Ms. Morales, you have the Commission's recognition. Use it wisely. Later that evening, back at the mansion, Ana found Isabella in the library doing homework. The girl looked up, excited.
Ana.
I got an A on my science project. Mrs. Patterson said it was the best presentation she'd seen in 10 years. That's wonderful, Principessa. I'm so proud of you. Daddy says when I turn 18, I can decide what to do with the family business. That I don't have to run it if I don't want to. Isabella's face grew serious beyond her years. He says you'll make sure I have choices. Always. Every choice in the world. Good. Because I think I want to be a marine biologist. Or maybe a veterinarian. I haven't decided yet, Isabella grinned. But definitely something with animals. They're easier than people.
Ana laughed.
They certainly are. That night, Ana stood in the old vault, now converted to a secure records room. The space where she'd once stolen 2 million euros to save a dying child now held legal documents, corporate filings, and trust agreements. Vittorio joined her, holding a small plaque. He mounted it on the wall where the cash had once been stacked. The plaque read, ANA 1-0-4. The new vault code, he explained. Ana, October 4th. The day you saved my daughter. The day everything changed. You're making me cry again, Ana said, wiping her eyes. Good tears this time, he smiled. You stole from me once. Now I'm trusting you with everything. My business, my legacy, my daughter's future. That's not a burden I give lightly. I know. I'll honor that trust. You already have. They stood in comfortable silence, two people from completely different worlds who'd found common purpose, protecting a child, building a future, proving that loyalty mattered more than bloodline. Upstairs, Isabella's laughter echoed through the halls as she played with the estate dogs. The sound of innocence, preserved by a father's love and a maid's courage. The Russo Empire had been built on fear and violence, but it would be sustained by something stronger. Trust, adaptation, and the understanding that true power came not from what you could take, but from what you could protect. Ana Morales had crossed a border with nothing, survived by being invisible, and somehow became the guardian of an empire. She'd stolen from the devil to save an angel. And in doing so, she'd redeemed them both.
The end.